Welcome to the Kenney Show. This is the place where we take a no bullshit look at life's little lessons. Here, together, we find the spiritual glory in even the most wicked hard story. This is a journey from fear back to love and how we can find our greatest strength and happiness in some of the most unlikely places. I believe that if you're willing to change your mind, you can totally change your life. So, are you ready to rewrite your story and choose to live free? Let's do this. Hey, you guys, welcome to the Kenney Show. I'm so happy to be here with you. And if you can hear the sound of my voice, thank you so much for tuning in. So, look, today's topic, it's an important one. It's an important one to me. And I think it might end up being an important one to you because I think some of you are going to definitely be able to relate. So I'm not sure what I'm going to call this one. I think I might call it Knowing What's Yours. Knowing What's Yours. And some other working titles that I had played with is kind of like picking your battles, choosing your battles. Save your energy. You know what I mean? But we're going to dive into what I mean by knowing what's yours. So something that I see a lot, first of all, also let me just say this. If you're watching this on YouTube, if you're watching me right now, instead of just listening, if my hair looks a little greasy, it's because my sweetie just got this new hair product conditioner, and it's like olive oil, leave-in, all natural, vegan, whatever, cruelty-free, whatever. And I was like, ooh, that smells good. I'm going to try it. But he is a coarse-haired person. He's a silver fox. So he has like nice silver hair. That's thick and curly when it grows long. And I have fine, not coarse hair. So I just started laughing. I just looked up and looked at myself and I was like, well, let's just give the people at home. I have showered. This is just the effect of a hair product. Oh boy. And we're back. Okay. Here's what I'm talking about today. So one of the things that I noticed, can I say lately? I don't know. It's been an ongoing thing on social media. Now, this is a culmination of private conversations that I've had, people reaching out to me, asking me my thoughts on this kind of thing. Just, I'll explain it. I'll stay with me. And then also me just through my own experience, seeing shit go down on social media. And one of the things that I think has happened is, so if you have a social media account, and if you have friends or followers, or what's often called, especially it's called this across the board, but we could say entrepreneurially in publishing or whatever, they call it your platform, right? So if you have a platform, if you have a way of reaching multiple people, whether you're a huge quote unquote influencer, I hate that word, but a huge quote unquote influencer, or they're what you call a micro influencer or whatever. So here's the thing. Anybody who basically has an account, whether it's on Instagram or TikTok or Facebook or whatever, the thousands of ways, Snapchat that people communicate nowadays. And then you have any group of people who tend to follow you, listen to you, whatever. And it could be people you know really well. It could be total strangers. There seems to be this other group of people, or just human beings on the planet, who seem to think that they get to tell you or other people what you should or shouldn't talk about, what you should or shouldn't care about, what you should or shouldn't do things about. Like, why aren't you focusing on this? Why aren't you focusing on that? And I just have wanted to say something about this for a long time. And I'm coming at it, of course, from the point of view me just being me, right? And then also being a writer, a speaker, a podcast host, a spiritual mentor. So as somebody who tends to have things to say, who tends to have an opinion about things, and is usually not afraid to say something about it. So in the past, I've had people reach out to me and say, KK, I don't know what to do. You know, I got a private message, or I had a friend, or I had an old friend, or somebody I used to know, and they came out swinging at me. These are my words, right? They came out swinging at me Or they'll say, they wrote to me and they're like, why aren't you using your platform to talk about this? Why aren't you posting about this, saying things about this, doing something about this? So other people kind of coming into your world and then trying to shame you, guilt you, blame you, push you, force you, they should on you, right? About what you can and can't do, what you should and shouldn't do. Now, I'm thinking about this, and I think the reason why it came up in my mind recently is because in the Nest this month, so the Nest is my, my spiritual membership and community. It's all about transforming your life, from the inside out. It's about being able to transform your thoughts and to choose to show up and live in a form of thought system that is based on love instead of fear. There's a lot to it. But so I think a lot about these kinds of things. What are the things that we care about? What are the things that we talk about? What are the things that we do things about? How do we show up, right? So this month in the Nest, we're talking about what I call the big three, which are your core values. And your core values, right? These things that you value, they're going to give you some insight into your identity. They're going to give you some insight into who you are, what you give a shit about, what you take a stand for, what you speak up about, what you whatever, right? So this got me thinking about this topic. So if you're out there right now and somebody has ever said to you or written to you or emailed you or whatever, DM'd you saying like, hey, you have a certain number of followers. Why aren't you doing or saying anything about this? Okay. Here's something that I want to say. Nobody gets to decide for you what you should or shouldn't care about. The fact of the matter is, or what you should speak about or do something about. Now, let me say this. As somebody who often speaks up and uses my big mouth, there have been plenty of times when there is a cultural thing going on, when there is a justice issue going on, there's a race thing going on. Well, when isn't there? Like, as long as America's been around, there's been a race thing going on. But when things tend to like really get heated or blown up, or we see something on the news, or we see some tragedy happening, or we see something happening, and a lot of people they'll often look to politicians or religious leaders or spiritual teachers or thought leaders or entrepreneurs with whatever. And sometimes I'm like, why do you think that person fucking knows anything mindful or helpful or healing to say in this moment, right? Sometimes I'm like, oh, you're looking for your information in kind of a suspicious source, from a suspicious source, right? But there have been times when things have happened and I knew immediately, like in my hat, in my bones, in my mind, like everything, all systems were go. Spiritual team was on the job, STOTJ. They're like, let's go. Because I had a very clear sense that there was something off, something amiss, or something important, and I wanted to speak to it. And I try not to talk about things that I don't know jack shit about, right? So there are times when I will either just say, hey, this is what I read, this is what I think. This is it. And then sometimes I do clarifiers where I say, this is my personal opinion. With the amount of information that I have right now, this is what I think. But let me tell you something. There have been times when things have happened where I went and I wrote like a whole post. I felt like I got to do something about this. And so sometimes when something comes in hot like that, we like to think, oh, it's a divine impulse. I'm being guided to do this. Sometimes though, your ego can be very sneaky and very tricky and very suspicious. And so I'll pound out a post, right? This long thing. But by the time I get to the end of writing it, I realize, yeah, you should not hit publish. You should not hit post on this. This is not coming from the place in your mind that is actually going to be helpful. You might ruffle I'm comfortable ruffling feathers, right? You might be a little bit stirring the pot, and I'm comfortable doing that too. I'm okay with that. But I want to make sure that I know exactly why I'm doing what I'm doing and saying what I'm saying, right? And why I feel compelled to post. So there have been times when I have spoken up, and then before I published, I deleted it. I'm like, not going to do this. There have been times when I've wanted to say something. I think in particular, I remember just off the top of my head, the Jesse Smollett, I hope I'm saying that right. When all of that was going down with him, you know, my immediate reaction was like, oh my God, this poor guy, this happened to him. But something in my gut just kept going, yeah, you don't have enough information yet. Yeah, you don't have the whole story here. And something just felt off. So I never did a post about it. And when I waited long enough, right, another kind of story emerged behind that. So I was kind of like, oh, good. I'm really glad I trusted my instincts on that. And I didn't speak up about it. But there are plenty of things that I do speak up about. And sometimes when you go to do that, right, it's like, I'll get this feeling like this is mine to say something about. So in the past, when other people have come to me saying like that they were being attacked in the comments or attacked in their private threads, or people calling them and saying, why aren't you using, and it's not even like they have, you know, a shit ton of followers, but just whatever, you know, when these people who come out of the woodworks and try to tell you what you should or shouldn't do, I always think of it like this. I answer to one authority. I answer to one boss. Now, I happen to call it God. I also call, I have no attachment to the word. I also call it like divine intelligence, my inner teacher, right? Sometimes I call it Holy Spirit. Sometimes I call it my inner teacher, but there is a higher knowing, a divine intelligence. There is something greater than me that I try to receive and respond from. And I certainly, you know, I appreciate when mortal humans, right, when other humans give me feedback or give me their point of view, or they share information with me. I think that's really helpful. But at the end of the day, I've got to follow what's coming through to me, right? What I am receiving, my instructions for the day, about what to, you know, as I say, I start each day with that prayer from A Course in Miracles, slightly adapted, right? Have me go where you would have me go, have me do what you would have me do, have me say what you would have me say, and to whom. So each day I ask, like, please help me to, you know, use my mind, use my mouth, use my hands and my feet, my capabilities, right? So I don't need some other human bum rushing me, trying to force me to have an opinion about something. And there have been times when people have reached out to me and said, you know, I wanted to say something about this, and I was so curious, like, what's KK going to say about this? And sometimes, like I said, I feel called to speak. I feel called to do. I feel called to show up at a rally, or I feel called to write something or send money. And sometimes I don't. And one of the things that I wanted to kind of tap into here, if I'm not making my point well, is this. There's these three questions that I like to ask myself. So if something is happening in the greater atmosphere, right, in the culture, in the collective, and right now, like, take a look around, it's a complete shit show. There is like so much that is happening right now. And so we need people with good, strong, when I say values, I mean people who give a shit, people who are strong, people who have generous hearts and generous open minds, and people who like are on the ground, you know, trying to do the work in favor of love. You know what I mean? Inclusive people, wise people, strong people, generous people. Like, well, these are the leaders that we kind of like want, right? These are the people who we want having the fucking microphone and the money. So, but when we take a look around right now, it's like the three questions that I often ask myself when something stirs up in the consciousness of the collective, and I feel like, is this something I want to say about? Now, it can be an injustice that I see happening. It can be somebody getting murdered or killed. It can be, you know, as a vegan, I'm obviously an animal rights advocate. I love to speak up on behalf of animals because they have no voice. and they can't ask for help. So as humans, we have to be tapped into that tender part of us, because we are all connected. I mean, we are all connected. There's a quote from an old, I don't know, I call him a preacher. I don't know, he might've been a pastor. His name was Henry Melville. And this quote actually often gets attributed to, what's his name? Herman Melville, the writer, but it wasn't him. It was Henry Melville, and he was a reverend. And he says, we cannot live only for ourselves. 1,000 fibers connect us with our fellow men. And among those fibers are sympathetic threads. And when I think about that, we are all connected through these fibers, this woven tapestry of sympathetic threads. So, it can be really hard when you take a look around at the world and the shit show and all the things that are happening. And we can feel pulled in so many directions. Like, it's like, oh my God, what do I give my time, my energy, my focus, my money, or whatever to? And so one of the things that is so important, I think, to know what to do. So first of all, there's 3 questions I keep in mind, but there's also, here's the thing, asking the questions is the easy part. It's being able to get quiet enough internally to be able to actually receive or intuit the answers. Because so often we do things impulsively out of fear, out of scarcity, out of a lack of whatever, right? Out of feeling like we have to, being forced, being triggered, right? So we oftentimes will take action from our history and from our past. We're not actually making a choice. We're having a button being pushed, and we feel like I gotta say something. I gotta do something now. And so that voice, quote unquote voice, that impulse often tends to be loud. It tends to feel really like hot and energized and like forceful, right? There's an energy to it. So we always want to be looking out for where the inclination, the impulse to speak, say, do, care, whatever comes from. So, if you're not, how do I say this? The title of this is Knowing What's Yours. But if you don't know yourself well enough yet, you're just going to go around inflicting yourself on people instead of inspiring others, right? And that's my whole thing. I would much rather somebody be a particular way in the world, to show up in the world as the living, breathing example they are being it. And then I can draw my own inspiration from seeing it, having my own experience of it, seeing it in action or hearing it in action and going like, ooh, that moved me. Like, oh yes, I feel inspired. Me too. I want to do that too. Right. I feel like I have something to contribute that made me want to give money or give time or whatever. And we also have to know ourselves well enough to know when something is not ours. When something is ours to say, speak, do, be inspired to do something, and when it's not. So there's these 3 questions that I sometimes like to ask myself. So again, it's hard to know if it's yours to do anything about if you are not quiet enough to listen. And there's a bunch of different ways to get quiet. Prayer, contemplation, meditation, journaling, being in nature, breath work, right? Yoga, however it is for you. And if you don't know what that is yet either, come join the nest, right? Come join the nest. We'll help figure it out, right? But here's the thing. So just knowing, all right? So here's the 3 questions that I kind of ask myself. When should I speak up? When should I shut up? So if something is going on, I'll try to get quiet and I'll tune in and I'll try to ask myself, is this something I should say something about? Am I being called to speak up right now or to shut the fuck up? You know what I'm saying? Because just because I have a big mouth doesn't mean that I should always use it. Just because I can doesn't mean I should. Just because I could doesn't mean it's the smart thing to do. All right. So question number 1, you can think of this as like, what's mine to speak on? What's mine to say? So I talk about it like this, right? Number 1, when to speak up, when to shut up. Then the next question I ask myself. So you can think of these as questions of clarity, questions of discernment. I think of them as ways to really attune to my instructions. Okay. My personal instructions, from the universe, from the divine, from God, from the source itself. Okay. The next question I ask is this mine to do something about, when to take action and when to be still? Because sometimes the best thing that I can do is to not jump on a bandwagon that is taken off and is out of control. Sometimes I have to just really get quiet and ask, is this mine to do something about? When to take action and when to be still. Okay. Then the next question I ask is this something that I need to guard? Is this something that I feel like is my personal assignment to, for lack of a better word, be mindful of, like not mindful, to care about, perhaps? Is this mine to care about? Now, I like to use the word God, and I'm going to tell you why. It makes me think of my border collie, Abby. Abby girl, who was my beloved best friend for 14 years, loyal, trustworthy, wicked smart, companion, the light of the world, man. She was the light of my world. Abby came through as a border collie with very specific DNA in place. If you've ever seen a border collie in action, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The first time she ever saw a ball, right? She dropped, like, I'm talking like puppy status. She dropped into that really iconic border collie stance, unmoving, the stare, like staring at, like she was on it, hyper focused. And I was like, whoa, I had never seen anything like that before. And Abby was like the guardian of that ball. That was her little sheep to shepherd around the yard, right? So she knew that she was in charge of the quote unquote little flock, right? The ball, she had a flock of one, and she had fuzzy, she ended up getting like some more like fuzzy little soccer balls over the years. Oh, it was the cutest thing. But anyway, I digress. But what I'm trying to say is she was the guardian of that. So this is when I asked the question, what's mine to God to do something about, right? To take a stand, to speak up about, to God, right? What is my assignment versus when is it time for me to turn it over to the guardians, to the other people who might be better appointed, better positioned, better, have more tools or resources or knowledge or wisdom than I. Because there are going to be times in my life when I think, of course I care about this. Of course I give a shit. Of course I'm aware of it. But I can't do everything for everybody, for every cause, for every tragedy, for every trauma. There is just not enough KK to go around. So circling back, it doesn't mean I don't care. It just means I don't have the capacity to do something about every injustice, every awful story, every terrible thing, the 1,001 ways that humans can be so fucking awful to one another, to the planet, and to the animals, right? It's like, oh my God. So it's like, when I think about it, right, we hear it talked a lot about, like, in terms of if something's on fire. I always say you cannot help people who are on fire while you're still burning. You have to wait, go to the triage tent, right? Heal yourself, and then maybe you can run back and help them. Do you know what I'm saying? But you can't put out a fire if you have no water in your own bucket. Just let that sink in for a sec, right? Like, you can't help other people put out their fires if your water has been evaporated, dehydrated, it's used up, you got nothing to give. So there are just going to be times when this is when you have to know what's yours. You have to pick. And I will sometimes say to people when we do this module around the big three, the core values, I say, pick your causes. I want you to know yourself, know what matters to you. It doesn't mean other things don't matter to you, but I want you to pick, right, your causes that really matter to you. So for me, I'll just give you a sample because I have many, right? So I used to, for lack of a better word, what did they call it? Sponsor. I used to sponsor a young boy in Tanzania. We called him George, right? That's the quote unquote American name that they gave him. He was from Tanzania. He was beautiful. And I sponsored him for many years. That was a cause, right? A young child in another country needing support, whatever. I don't need to give you all the details. That was really close to my heart. Animal rescue, close to my heart. MSPCAs, things like that. People who vegan activism, right? Getting the word out in a way about education, educating people about different points of view. Not saying that you go out and you attack people and force shit on them and whatever. But I think education, wicked important, right? Sometimes there's certain movies or certain speakers who are like doing great work, totally into it. Violence against women, violence against children, nonviolent things, right? Because I know that also young boys and men have violence perpetrated against them. That's one of my causes. That's mine, right? So what I'm saying is, I mean, on and on and on. There's more, right? But let's just use those as a sampling. So those are the things that I will do shout outs about, do fundraisers for, donate to, speak up about. But there's other causes too. All you have to do is go back through my Facebook feed over the years and you will see that I have spoken up about all different kinds of things, sometimes political, sometimes socioeconomic, sometimes whatever, tragedies, whatever. So what I'm trying to say is, though, it's because I know myself. But here's the thing. I'm a wicked sensitive person. I am not the only one on the planet. I think we are all wicked sensitive people for the most part, right? Some of us are better at numbing out, distracting, whatever, not looking, whatever, right? But so I know that if I was to always watch the news, always read the newspapers, always take in like every awful thing that was always happening in the world at all times, I would get completely paralyzed and overwhelmed. So I pick the things that I feel called, right? I got my assignment to do something about, to do shit about. So I go back and I say, sometimes when I don't have money, I'm like, I do have a platform, so I can post about it. I can share about it. There's different ways to do this, right? Sometimes if I have a little extra cash, right? I mean, I donate all the time to things. My friends who are riding their bike for cystic fibrosis, or my friend who's doing this walk, or my friend who's doing that thing, my friend who has an animal rescue in Florida, right? Like I'm always trying to support the things that I can, right? Literacy. Oh my God. Like, you know, things for libraries. Like there are certain things near and dear to my heart because I know myself. So what I'm saying to you is you get to decide for yourself what is yours. This is for me to do something about. Now, sometimes I believe if somebody brings something to your awareness, you get to decide if this is something that I want to take up the flag for, take up the cause for, right? Like go to battle for. But nobody else can make you, force you, whatever. And sometimes as an activist for, animals, people on the human rights front, right, will say, oh, don't you care about humans? And sometimes the people on the vegan side or the animal side or the animal or the environment, right, it will be like, don't you care about the whales? Don't you care about that? It's like, oh my God, of course we care. But we only have so much bandwidth. We only have so many resources. And here's the other thing. When I get to that third question, right? What to God, when to God, and when to turn it over to the better suited guardians. That's a really big one. For me, especially, because as a professional helper, is somebody who loves to solve problems, is somebody who loves to help, is somebody who loves to cheerlead and put other people first. It's like, I can't help everybody all the time. And that can sometimes feel bad, right? You can end up feeling like a little guilty. You can end up feeling like, oh man, I wish I had more money, more time. So sometimes, you know what I do? Like I say a prayer. I say, I ask, may the helpers who can do the best job for this. So not everything is ours to do. And definitely sometimes not everything is ours to do publicly. I cannot stress this enough. There have been times when there's a lot happening again in the collective, right? And I often say, like, I don't need to post on social media every single day. I'm not judging people. I'm telling you what works for me. So let me be wicked clear about that. I don't need to let everybody know when I've made a donation. I don't need to let everybody know what I think about all things all the time. I don't need people to know, that I'm supporting people on the ground or going here and donating time or donating whatever. Like I'm not here to get pat on the head for being a good girl. Sometimes I like to do things anonymously. Sometimes I just like to do them because it's the right thing to do and it feels good. But I don't have to make a fucking announcement about it to get approval from this one, permission from that one. And, like I said, the pat on the head over there. And the bottom line is like, our job is to just do the work. Like if you're going to say something on social media, if you feel called to use your platform, to say something, great, do it. But then get back to work. I'm like, I'm not sitting here to try and make other people see my goodness, right? I have no desire to be like the savior. That is not my thing. I can do what I can do, right? I can't fix everything. I can't solve everything. But I think to myself, what's mine to say something about, to show up for, to stand up, to speak up, to give, to support, to guard and protect, and what's not mine. And it doesn't mean, again, remember, think about those sympathetic threads. It doesn't mean that you don't care and that you don't understand that all living beings, that's the whole thing as being a wicked sensitive person. Other people's suffering, other beings' suffering is wicked tender to me. It's why I do the work that I do. It's why I try to help people through transformational work, to help them stop their own suffering, to think better thoughts, to show up as the divine extensions of love that they are, to understand that they are what I call one of God's kids. That's so important, because the more people heal their shit, think better thoughts, understand, your story to your glory, how we do that work, they can start showing up as way more empowered, way more resourceful, way more helpful. They become one of the hashtag helpers. So I care deeply about a lot of things, but the thing is that not everybody has to, I don't have to have a little check pad to prove to everybody that I'm out there and that I'm reading all the books and learning everything and, signing up for stuff and that's for me. Hopefully the work that I do in private or silently or with the divine is going to show up in my character. It's going to show up in my choices. It's going to show up in my offerings. It's going to show up in, the way that I show up, in the person that I am being. I hope something that I shared today, from my heart also lands in yours. This is something that, this being human, it's hard work. And I think that there's a call a lot of times in this age of digital media and social media and all this stuff where we feel like we've got to report back to everybody all the time. But there is a lot of work that goes unseen. There's a lot of stuff that, you just never even know about. And there will be times when it is appropriate to say, hey, I donated this, because you want other people to know about a cause and you want them to know that there's a walkathon or there's a thing. And so you can share it on Facebook, and that's great. But if somebody comes at you in your private comments or your whatever, and they're trying to tell you what you should and shouldn't do and shouldn't care about, go back to these 3 questions, right? When should I speak up or shut up? When should I take action versus when should I be still? When to guard versus when to turn it over to the guardians? And you ask these discerning questions. listen deeply. The voice for the divine, it doesn't shout. It doesn't grip. There's no contracting. The voice for the ego, we always say, in A Course in Miracles, it says the ego speaks first, loudest, and I often say, and is always wrong. But the voice for spirit, Holy Spirit, your inner teacher, your intuition, your gut instinct, again, don't care what you call it, your highest knowing, your divine intelligence. It understands the power of love. So it can kind of just like roll into you. And I'm not going to say that sometimes you don't feel fiery about a thing, but there's a vibrational difference. Let me say that there's an energetic difference. And I want you to be doing things out of love instead of out of fear. I want you to be doing things because you feel called forth rather than being forced from something outside of you, right? I really want you to know what's yours. And then I would love to hear about it. If there's causes or things in particular that you love, that you support, sorry, my nose is so itchy right now. If there's something that you are passionate about or support or whatever, I love that. Thank you so much, actually, if you're listening to this, for supporting the show. This show is one of the ways that I get to share and get to connect with people and get to talk about things that matter for for me. And that I hope also at the same time it's kind of a one-way conversation because I'm talking to you, but that I get to share that. And I hope, really, I always think like, if I say something that somehow makes a difference, whether it gets somebody to think differently, it helps to create transformation. That's what I really am always hoping, that something that I'll say will create some sort of helpful something, whether it's a transformation or an awareness. I always say to educate, to elevate, to enlighten, to entertain, something that's going to help. Right. And that it brings, I don't know, I'm so kind of over that whole bringing value, but I do value this podcast. I do value the value. All right. You got to, you got to value yourself. You got to value what you're sharing. You got to value what you're offering. Otherwise, what's the fucking point of like sharing it? So I hope something that I shared today landed for you, was helpful for you. And remember, you always have those 3 questions, right? And I hope that those help you too the next time that you feel like, is this something I should say? And look, there's going to be times too. Let me just say this final thing. There are going to be times when you feel called to say, to do, to raise awareness, to speak up, and your heart is just going to be hammering in your chest, and your throat's going to get closed, and your mouth's going to go dry, and you're going to start to feel a little scared, right? Like, oh my God, if I put this out there, they're going to come for me. What are people going to think of me? What are they going to say? What are they going to do? And there are some times when it just doesn't matter what other people are going to, like, when you get that call, when the bat phone lights up, bring, right, when that sucker goes, there are just sometimes I'm like, oh, there's no way I can't answer this. Then there's no way that I can't fulfill the assignment. And, you can go and listen to that episode, The Willingness to Be Unpopular, because there are times when I just say, oh, some people aren't going to like this. The same thing with my book, with my memoir, the book that I'm writing. I'm like, yep, there might be some people who may not like me sharing my truth, my story. But it's mine to tell. And if you know me at all, you know that I have no bone in my body about revenge, getting back at people, making people feel guilty or bad or shaming anybody. I'm just telling the story that is mine to tell, I have been anointed to tell. I just laugh. I'm like, I was made a writer. I don't know what to tell you. I came through this way. I came through this way, with words being my gift, and like to speak them, to say them when I say, or my impulse, right? The way that I share with the world. So you guys, I hope this was helpful. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day. Whenever you're listening to this, whether you're going to have sweet dreams or you're just waking up in the morning or you're out on your walk with your dog or whatever it is, just thank you for being a part of the Kenney family. And if you found this helpful in any way, please share it with those you love. Please help me to spread the love. Please help me to spread the good word. If you haven't yet already, and you want to get these suckers delivered right into your inbox, you can just go to KarenKenney.com/sign up, and you can get those, and it'll be great. So then every Thursday morning, you'll get these delivered right to you. So you guys, wherever you go, first of all, know what's yours, know yourself. And wherever you go, may you leave the people, the place, the animals, the environment better than how you found it. Wherever you go, may you be a blessing. Bye. Hey, you guys, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of The Karen Kenney Show. I super duper appreciate your time, friendship, and support. And look, if something that I shared from my heart today somehow landed in yours, I'd love to hear about it. So please tag me on Facebook or Instagram or IG stories or wherever the cool kids are hanging out these days, and let me know what your favorite part was or what you found most helpful. You can find me over at Karen Kenney Live. That's Karen, KenneYlive. And if you're digging what I'm saying and you want to hear more, I'd be wicked grateful if you could go to iTunes and subscribe and leave a review, because you guys, that's how you'll help me to keep spreading the love. And if you can think of someone that could benefit from hearing this episode, please share it with them. I'd also love to stay connected with you. So if the feeling is mutual, please go to KarenKenney.com/freebie and download my free guide to building your spiritual team. Until next time, my brothers and sisters, keep living in the fearless flow. Know that I see you, I appreciate you, and I love you. And wherever you go, may you be a blessing.